So this is my second town hall meeting since I had the opportunity to take the oath of office back in first week of January. My first town hall was in Londonderry, and this is my second. And it's really so far a privilege and an honor to serve you as your representative in Congress. And I use the term representative because that's the way I view this responsibility and this job. I'm here to represent each and every one of you, and what you'd like to see reflected in Washington. I know that we're not always going to agree 100% of the time, but I hope that we can always have a positive and constructive dialogue about the direction of the country, the needs that you feel are critical and important, and how I can best serve you while I serve as your member of Congress. This is a very interesting Congress. We have a very large freshman class. Haven't had a chance to meet every single member of the freshman class yet because it's almost 100 new members. But it's a feisty group, it's an interesting group, and it's a group that's very engaged and has a lot of ideas about how to improve our nation. And what I think is so unique about our nation and our country is that when there are challenges that we have, and there are concerns that we have, regardless of our political ideology, we get engaged in our government. And I think that's a good and positive thing. And it's great to see so many people here tonight who are interested, who are engaged, and who are willing to take part in what I think is probably one of the most important times in our history. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for having the time and energy. I'll just talk for a few minutes, and then I want to open it up to questions and try to get to as many of your questions as we can. What I'll do around 8 o'clock is when we're scheduled to end. I know that people will probably want to stay and chat afterwards, so I'll stay afterwards, but just in case people do have other things that they want to do, we'll try to end around that time, but I'll certainly stay to talk with people privately if we don't get to each and every person's question. First, let me tell you just a little bit about me. My wife Morgan and I have two young kids, 7 and 6. Our daughter Colby is in 2nd grade, and our son Jack is in kindergarten and trying to outdo his older sister in multiplication tables. So this week I had a chance to be home for the week for a district work period, and we're sitting at dinner and we're doing our multiplication tables, and say to Colby, what's 4 times 2? And Jack yells out 16. And Colby then says, well, no, that's wrong, it's 6. So we've got a little work to do with the math problems in our household. But it's been really good to spend time when I get home with my family. The calendar, the congressional calendar is such that we are in Washington for the better part of each week. About 4.5 days a week, and I come back and forth every week. We wanted to raise our family in New Hampshire, keep our family here in New Hampshire, because I think it's a great place to visit. I also think it's important for your member of Congress not to live in Washington, but to be here as much as he or she possibly can be. The only way that I can keep focused on what you want is to be here and to be listening to you. You can't do that if you're spending too much time in D.C. So the only time I'm in D.C. is when we have committee hearings or votes. Other than that, I'm back in New Hampshire. Now the calendar has changed a little bit, and once a month, roughly, we have a district work period. So during that period, our goal as members of Congress is to make sure that we come, we listen, talk, meet with our constituents, talk with our constituents. So this was the ability for us to make sure that we had our next town hall meeting. We'll probably do one just about every month or so as the schedule allows, but these are great formats for us to have conversation and dialogue about the direction of the nation. Prior to my services, your member of Congress, I served for 4 years as the mayor of Manchester. Not new to tough issues and tough ideas and tough challenges. But we were able, I think, to make progress in reforming how government worked when I was a mayor. We were able to cut spending, cut taxes, invest in our city to make it a better city. I think it's a family-friendly environment where I'm very proud to live. I'm very proud to raise my family. And that's what I think we want to do to a larger extent for our communities, for our state, and for our nation. So the first 2.5 months, we have engaged in a lot of different issues. And votes and the subject matter of what's occurred in Washington has certainly elicited a lot of different responses from people. And I appreciate that ability and that willingness of anybody, regardless of how they feel, to make their opinion known. And that is so critical for you to continue to communicate with me, so I have a good sense and a good idea of what you would like as a member of Congress. Now, one thing I want to do before I start is, this is my voting card. And I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to see this, but this has my name on it, my picture. Basically, you go into the floor of the House, you put this in, you're voting yes or no or present. I want to hand this out. I want everyone to take a look at it, because this is your voice. And it's very important that you know that you have an opportunity to influence how this card affects the United States Congress. And it's very, very critical that we get that feedback, whether it's through our offices or to me directly. But this is the voice that you have, and to the extent that I will do my best to make sure that it's reflective of what you'd like to see in Washington. So the only thing I ask is, if I don't get it back, I have to pay for a new one. Whoever gets it last, if you could please remember to give it back to me, I would certainly appreciate it. So the first couple of months, we have engaged in an array of different issues. I think this last campaign was largely about trying to get our fiscal house in order, to focus on our debt and our deficit, to try to find different and better solutions for health insurance and the cost of health care, and to really focus on having an economy that is going to grow and get stronger. We have still unemployment that exceeds 8% in this nation. Here in Plaistow, it's over 9%. It's unacceptable. And we've got to have policies in Washington that promote a pro-growth agenda, being smart and sensible about fiscally challenging issues, and being fiscally disciplined, and make sure that government is not in the way of job creators and employers, but enhances the environment for employers and small business owners right here in New Hampshire to succeed. So that's what we have been focusing on for the first couple of 2.5 months. And I'll give you an idea. Again, we have a $1.6 trillion deficit, a $14 trillion debt. Those are serious problems. And they're problems that I hope we can find bipartisan solutions to, both in the House and the Senate. My sense is that this country doesn't want us to be arguing. The country wants us to solve problems and find ways to work together to move our country forward. Now, we can still have our positions. We can still stand on our principles. But I think it's incumbent upon us to find the things that we agree on and move this country forward. Because quite frankly, I don't think the country wants to see the fighting. I think the country wants to see the problem solving, the solutions. Considering the way Congress can affect business owners and local economies is our spending habits. The first thing we did is spend the first month cutting budgets. The first month we cut about $650 million. Just to start, we cut our own budgets, our own congressional budgets, to show that this is not just about the rest of the country, this is about how Congress acts, and that Congress has to be more responsible. We did vote to repeal the President's health care legislation, because I don't think it was reflective of and we are looking at solutions to make sure that we can provide an opportunity for everyone in this country to pay less for their health insurance. And that is important. This is not just about saying no, this is about solving America's problems. So right now you have 5 committees of jurisdiction over health care that are reviewing different components of how we can deliver more effective, less expensive options to the nation. Then we moved into, what you're watching in this continuing resolution debate and dialogue. And the reason, I want to explain to people why we're at this point. The last Congress didn't vote on a budget, nor did they pass it, nor did they offer a budget. What they did was have what we refer to as a continuing resolution, which is essentially spending at existing levels through March 4th. So at that point, we either had to extend the continuing resolutions, or the government would shut down. So the House went to work and essentially looked at the operating budget, which is roughly $1.1 trillion, which is what the President wanted in spending. And the House said, well, that's excessive. We're going to bring it back to 2008 levels, which is a rough cut of $100 billion off of $1.1 trillion. And that's not the entire budget. That's just what you hear as discretionary spending, what I refer to as the operating budget. When we passed the House, went over to the Senate. The Senate disagreed with us. The Senate came back and asked us if we would do a short-term continuing resolution while they tried to continue to negotiate with House leaders. So I think in a collegial decision, the House said yes, but what we'll do is prorate those cuts on a weekly basis. So we're doing $2 billion in cuts a week. So the first continuing resolution, short term, was 2 weeks. That was $4 billion in spending reductions. The second one was 3 weeks, $6 billion in spending reductions. So that takes us to April 8th. Now, the sense that I have is that the House is not willing to continue on these short-term resolutions for the remainder of the year. The federal fiscal year ends at the end of September. We've given the Senate multiple opportunities to come back to the table and come to an agreement. And I think what you'll see is a long-term continuing resolution voted on, finalized, and then we'll get on with the country's business, which is namely the next budget. The three committees that I serve on are Budget, Oversight and Government Reform, and Transportation and Infrastructure. Each and every day I spend a part of my day crafting the fiscal year 2012 federal fiscal budget. It's not easy. We've got $3.7 trillion of spending and about $2.2 trillion of revenue. 40% of the budget is entitlements, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. Another $700 billion is defense, and the remainder is debt, interest on debt, and discretionary spending. So we're going through that process, trying to figure out the best and most effective way to reduce our spending, to get to balance, and to bring fiscal discipline back to our nation's capital. And while, of course, it's challenging, I'm optimistic, and I feel that we will get through this. I think people are expecting us to make tough decisions and the right decisions. And we want to make sure that we do that, so the best way I can do that is hold events like this, listen to what you have to say, and then try to reflect what it is that you want me to do in Washington. So it has been, so far, a great honor to be your member of Congress. I think we have a lot of work to do on behalf of the nation, but we're ready to do that work, and we're going to do everything we can to make you proud for the tough decisions you're about to make. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions.